All right, Quinn Ewers is my number 5. I cannot believe I'm the low man on Quinn Ewers on this show, considering how of a screaming match we were getting at PFF because I wanted him in the top 32 of our mock draft, and you're like, absolutely not. But all right, here we go. Yeah, listen, Texas was finally back this past year because of Quinn Ewers. A big reason for that. He cut the mullet, and he cut the gunslinger mentality that kind of hindered him in 2022. His turnover-worthy play rate in 2022 was 3.6%. He cut it basically in half, or more than half, to 1.7% this past year. His passing grade went from a 70.9 to an 85.6. So really big-time improvement for Quinn Ewers as a redshirt sophomore. However, why his NFL projection a little bit is a little bit, we're lower at least than most people, because I see a lot of number one overall talk for him. He led the Power 5 in play action dropbacks. He had 240 play action dropbacks this past year. And when you take those out, he wasn't nearly as efficient without play action. He had a 72.2 passing grade, or PFF grade, on non-play action dropbacks, which was 83rd in the country. Also, he's going to have to shoulder a lot more of the offensive weight without Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Jordan Whittington, Jonathan Brooks, Tavion Sanders. They lost a lot on offense. Yeah, they brought in some talented receivers, namely Isaiah Bond, who could be a first-round pick. The more I watch, I watched a lot of wide receiver tape yesterday. I think Isaiah Bond, we might have messed it up by not putting him in the first round. I think that guy's going to be a first-round pick next year. But he's going to be the top weapon. They got Matthew Golden there as well. Silas Bolden transferred in as well from Oregon State. So they have a brand-new receiving core, and Amari Niblack from Alabama is a really talented tight end as well. So they have new weapons there, but I just don't think it'll be as good as what they had this past year. But if he can keep improving, and if he can carry the offense more, I think the Longhorns are serious national championship contenders, and I could be more on board with Quinn Ewers being one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. It's just it's still a little more wait and see with Quinn Ewers right now. So he's my number 5 quarterback. I cannot believe that you are higher on Quinn Ewers than me in this quarterback list, though.
Yeah, and we'll just keep the conversation going because I do have him at number 4, and it's he's to me closer to Dart at number 5 on this list than he is to the top 3. I think there's a pretty clear gap between the top 3 and the rest of the list. Look, it's just the more numbers I look at, and it's like 13th in the country in passing grade, 6th in the country in turnover-worthy play rate, 8th in the country in play action grade in a heavy play action offense. More than half of his dropbacks are play action. He's a master of the RPO. I'll admit that part. Look, the last 2 years, when there's an RPO on, he's got an 82.9 passing grade, which is actually second in the country, right? He runs the same way that Dart runs Kiffin's offense to just that level of excellence. Ewers does the same thing with Sarkisian. The harder part with Ewers and why he can't be higher on this list than this is 4 is probably the absolute highest. It's that thing of, like, especially with college quarterbacks, and you know how things are year to year with college players. There can be a lot of variance. They're young kids. I think we pretty much know what we're getting out of Quinn Ewers. If nothing else, you're getting what you got out of him last year. The question is, do we know too much about what we're getting out of Quinn Ewers? He's got only 2 career games with 90-plus grades, but they were both against Alabama. So it's so hard to tell.
No sense.
It's a consistency thing. It's a ceiling thing. Like, can he... I think it's a much closer to Dart than it is to the next 3 guys on the list, because can he, in those big moments when everyone knows we're dropping back, can he do that? He also does less. I mean, I was thinking about, really, the debate for me was it Ewers or Dart at 4 and 5? Which is it? I kind of settled in on Milroe at 6, and I kind of coin flipped it between these two, but you've got 2 very similar situations, right? The difference for me, Ewers has shown us the high end a little bit more than Dart in dropback situations, even though he's definitely less mobile than Jackson Dart. There is not a ton of improv with Quinn Ewers, and I think that's going to come into play with his draft stock too. But when you look at the running game he has, the weapons, he's got to gel with the weapons coming in with, like you mentioned, Isaiah Bond and Amari Niblack. And I really like Silas Bolden from Oregon State, man. I'm telling you right now. That's going to be a playmaker. He may even come in and be better than Jordan Whittington has been for them the last few years. It's just to me, the more I thought about it, more so than a high-end Heisman contending sort of thing. And I don't know that Ewers is good enough to win a national title. I really don't. it's a safe projection, especially with Sarkisian and the way they run their offense. The things he's good at in that offense, he's really, really good at. I have to admit that. I don't know that it translates to the NFL. I really don't. Right now, I wouldn't have him as a first-round guy. But if you're projecting Texas and their offense and their run game and these weapons and the way Ewers just knows how to run it. Now, like you've said it before, week 2, he could go into the big house in Ann Arbor and struggle, and we start hearing about Arch Manning, especially the way he looked in the spring game. There's going to be a question sometime this year of, is Quinn Ewers good enough to win a title? But by the numbers, it's a safe projection. And I was between him and Dart 4 and 5, and I went with Ewers, just knowing we've seen the high end in big spots, especially those 2 Bama games, a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think him over Dart makes sense too, because Dart, had a 58 passing grade this past year against Alabama, and the year before was a 65.1. So Ewers, like I said, was 90 plus both years. So it almost doesn't make sense sometimes when you see some of these games where he's just like the Wyoming game. He was terrible in the Wyoming game. He almost lost that game. But then that was a week after Alabama. So it was like he had a 90.6 passing grade against Alabama, then a 50.2 against Wyoming the very next week. So it's just like the inconsistency is maddening sometimes with Quinn Ewers, because you see him against the best secondary in college football just tearing them up, and then Wyoming, he just all of a sudden shits the bed. So yeah, Quinn Ewers is maddening sometimes, man, but the arm talent is there. I like him a lot. I think he could be a first-round pick next year,